and a few other things that I think are of high interest and of serious interest. But let's make sure some people are getting on here first, and then we'll get cranked right up. So, how's the audio going? How's everything going wherever you're at? Please say where you're at in the world, by the way. There's people that come on from all over the world, from Sweden to Australia to South Africa to Finland to Thailand, all over, Japan, Hong Kong, Taiwan, just all over the place. And so, and how is everybody doing in Hawaii, Alaska, and everywhere else tonight? Florida. I'm from Florida. Hey, Jim, Michigan. All right. Hey, Jan. All right. Lay in New Mexico. I can't wait to get back over there. Hello, Mumbai. Hope everything's. I was just reading about India to see how it's going in India. Sounds like about 40,000 cases so far in India identified. Hey, in Brazil and in Mississippi, Penny and Sophia in Mississippi, two people back to back in Mississippi. Hey, Tammy, where are you at? And in Seattle, Mark is in Seattle. Jan's in California. Eddie's in Georgia. Georgia. Which Georgia? I know which Georgia. USA. And Massachusetts. Hey, Wayshawn in Perth. Ned in Florida. Well, let's get rolling. Man, people all over the place. And UK. Angela. Okay, let's get going. And please share this out because, Facebook, you know how they are. And so, and also this goes to YouTube, which has better, actually has better quality. If you look on my YouTube pages, I'm looking down because I was looking at comments. And so quite a few things to talk about with U.S. states opening back up. One thing I want to talk about early, because a lot of people are asking me, hello in Italy. And wow, I wonder how it's going over there in northern Italy. So you're going to open back up on 4th of May as well, which is right about now. And deaths are down to about 200 a day in India. I mean, not India, Italy at this point. Of course, Italians have just learned a huge lesson, so I think Italians may be quite cautious. Hey, in Sweden, let's talk about Sweden, actually. I'm getting so many messages about Sweden and people asking to compare the United States and others to Sweden. But it's difficult to compare because cultures are so different around the world. And Swedish culture is, its own little universe, right? A lot of people already social distance as a matter of course in Sweden, and many people live alone in Sweden. And there's a great healthcare system in Sweden. And so there's many other things. However, let's talk about that. I happen to have Sweden pulled up because so many people ask me about it. Let's talk about it. Here, let's get it going here. So here you go with a chart. You can see look on the right column here on deaths per million. You'll see Belgium is doing the worst on deaths per million, for various countries around the world, and Spain next. But Belgium's up there with about 680 deaths per million so far, and then Spain, and then comes Italy, UK, France, Netherlands, Ireland, and then Sweden. So Sweden's actually one of the top in the world with about 289 deaths per million so far. I'm sorry, 262. And so actually doing worse than the United States. Of course, we have to keep in mind there are many questions about the accuracy of the statistics collection around the world and in the United States. What's being attributed correctly and incorrectly, and that sort of thing. And so there you go with Sweden. I mean, it's actually doesn't appear to be doing quite as well as a lot of other, as most countries. It's one of the worst, actually. But that said, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in detail, and I'll give you my thoughts on it. And some people are asking about what's behind my head. We'll talk about that later. That was a grenade that hit my hotel room. But we'll talk about that later. All right. So let's talk about a few things, and then I'm going to answer as many questions as possible. I'm looking at some notes over here on a different screen. So I think we've gotten the Sweden thing out of the way, this idea that Sweden somehow is magically doing better than the rest of the world because they've opened up, but in fact they're clearly not. So let me take these earbuds out. And but does that make opening up wrong? In my view, absolutely not. But let's talk about a few things. First of all, let's talk about the 1918 pandemic. That is very much worth studying. Luckily, I've read about it over the years, and I'm reading about it more now. And what you'll find is it's good to brush up on it now if you've read about it over the years, because the parallels with what's going on today are phenomenal. I mean, it's almost like the same thing happening with the politicians saying this and, different countries doing this and that. And, a top scientist saying it's from a bacteria when it's from a virus, and it was a hugely respected scientist. And so other scientists are like, yeah, so he said it, so therefore it must be true. And that sort of thing. And then scientists, backbiting, and politicians backbiting, and war being prosecuted. So cover up from the president at the time, which was Wilson. Oh, so many things that are just remarkably similar to now. Just change the names, basically. And huge numbers of people saying it's just the flu. We're talking 1918. Huge numbers of people saying it's just the flu. Right at huge numbers in 1918. The media completely unreliable. The public health service as bad then in 1918 as it is now. You should see some of the statements they made in 1918. And so that first wave of the Spanish flu came in. It's only called the Spanish flu because there was a war going on, and in countries like the United States, UK, France, there was a huge censorship going on. And Spain was neutral in the war, so Spain was reporting it, and it was in Spanish newspapers, and so they called it the Spanish flu. It's only called the Spanish flu because Spain was reporting it. It really may have started in Haskell County, Kansas. That's unknown, but it appears to have started there, and then was brought in by soldiers in U.S. military bases and places like Texas and Massachusetts, and then exported over to Europe. That's what appears to have happened. And but let's not get into that. I'm not a historical scientist, so but the bottom line is that as it was clearly a hugely terrible disease, and it was clearly way out of control, there were still politicians covering it up, doing public gatherings, and a lot of scientists completely backing them up. And then other scientists saying, whoa, 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 watch out for this thing. This is, and then the second wave hit. We're getting into about August at that point and this thing carries a similar timeline to ours. Just the current, CCP virus. Just rewind the tapes to 1917 and 18 and 19 and rewind it. And it's kind of a similar month by month timeline. And then we saw, people saying we need to social distance and that sort of thing, and we need to quarantine. And then there was pressure not to quarantine in various places like Philadelphia because they're doing a huge funding drive for the war, World War I, and just so many things like this, which just led to catastrophe after catastrophe. Shortage of nurses and doctors, but that was coming a little later. So we had that first wave come through, which was pretty doggone bad. But people explained it away like, oh, it's just the flu. And President Wilson, he wouldn't even mention it. It was just like taboo. And you could be put in prison back then. Newspapers shut down for saying anything remarkably even close to anti-war. It was total like North Korea type stuff in the USA. I mean, they would close your newspaper for saying something anti-war, like snap. And, there was the whole, report people who are anti-American type stuff. And it was amazing. And so anyway, to get past that, but that was part of this whole equation. And so then we get into about August, right? So we had that first kind of wave come through. We're talking 1918. And then it kind of seems to go, kind of abate maybe for a while. And then we get into August and September, and that bad boy starts taking off. And people are still trying to explain it away. It killed tens of millions of people. It just like ravaged across the earth at that point. And there was still people trying to explain it away. It's just the flu. Meanwhile, we had people on ships. We had people that were death ships, plague ships. I mean, they were just like U.S. Navy today, except a lot were troop transports and that sort of thing. And they would get on ships that just previously had infected people on them, or in army barracks, and it would just smoke them. It's like they would get infected in that ship, even after quarantines and other things. And so just, dumping people out to sea, burial at sea. I mean, it was just huge amounts. And so, well, there we went. So, but if you study, one good book to read is The Great Influenza. And if you read that book, you will see what's happening then and what's happening now are so weirdly parallel. It's almost like like The Great Influenza was written next year, but it wasn't. It was published way back. So this was published before now. And so it's just so weird. And so let's talk about, for instance, New York was slammed very hard right in the beginning, just like now. And in New York, shortages of doctors, morgues overflowing, shortages of nurses, people kidnapping nurses in some parts of America because they were kidnapping them because they needed them. They were calling people into hospitals that did not graduate from medical or nursing school because they flunked, right? Now, keep in mind, our medical schools were not as good back then as they are now. But the top scientists back then, they weren't primitive people. They were just as advanced thinking wise as anybody is now. Our real top scientists back in 1918, they were absolutely crisp and clear thinkers. They were real scientists. They did, the real top scientists were as good as anything that exists now. They were less advanced because it was 1918, but in their thinking, scientific methods, controls, trying to control also for emotions, like we're excited, we need a cure, we need whatever, we need answers, we need, the real top scientists, especially the ones that had control of themselves. If you don't have control of yourself, you're not going to be a good scientist. You have to have control of your emotions and not get excited and start to lean too far ahead in the saddle. And then come up with cockamamie ideas like it started by a virus, a bacteria, which one of the top scientists did. And it wasted a lot of time. But anyway, but there were top scientists who just as good as they are now and working on this, and, people wanting answers quick. And they're like, look, cultures grow in petri dishes only so fast. You know what I mean? There are physical limits to how fast we can go. There's physical limits to how fast the scientists can do things. I mean, there's how fast do your cultures grow? How fast after you inject it into another animal will you get results, and then take it from that animal and give it to another? I mean, there's only so fast you can go. There are physical barriers that you can't overcome unless you got a time machine. And so another thing that happened back in the 1918 pandemic was just people throwing around credentials all over the place like they are now and going, oh, here's an expert. Let's believe that guy. And he's completely wrong, completely models wrong. Do you believe any models that you see now? I don't even read them. And people send me stuff from the CDC every hour. And I'm like, whatever, it's CDC. They're no more accurate now than the Public Health Service was in 1918. And the Public Health Service now has lost all credibility because Jerome Adams, the U.S. Surgeon General, was telling us not to wear masks and all these other things. I don't believe them. I just don't believe them. And this catastrophic loss of credibility also happened in 1918 and in other pandemics. And this led to more deaths because then people like me and you started to not believe them. And so we didn't know when they're telling us the truth or when they knew what the truth even was. And so we stopped believing them. Like, I don't believe anything they say anymore. Now, we're going to keep going, and then I'm going to give some thoughts on opening up, then I'm going to answer as many questions as possible. I'm just about there, actually. And then I'm going to start answering questions. Now, I want to say a few things about states opening up and then go to questions. All right. My thoughts on states opening up. Now, keep in mind, I was once a Green Beret training to parachute into Poland to kill Soviets on what would probably have been a suicide mission, right? And I was going to do it if it came down to it. So keep in mind my personality, you know, the one that went cannibal hunting alone in the jungles of India and that sort of thing. The one who is probably the most experienced American combat correspondent alive. I don't mean war correspondent. I mean straight up combat. So in other words, my threshold of danger is quite high. My threshold of a willingness to suffer losses to win is extremely high. So that's coming from me. You know, Scott Adams will say, be careful from taking advice from me. I'm a cartoonist, right? That's what Scott Adams will say. Well, Michael Yon will say, be careful taking, risk advice from me because, first of all, I am a safety fanatic, as you've noticed. I'm constantly, I already had masks before this pandemic even unfolded. I bought 600 masks in January to hand out to people in Hong Kong and Taiwan. I got many vaccines last year in Thailand to return to India. And then the insurgency started in Hong Kong, and I went there and confronted police in the streets of Hong Kong, and it's a wonder they didn't beat my brains out. I mean, you may have seen the video. So the advice coming from me is a high threshold, willing to take losses man, right? That said, I think states should open up, knowing, or at least strongly suspecting, that this is going the way of 1918 at this point, and that opening up, especially because so many Americans are knuckleheads and not wearing masks. I see the videos constantly, like Americans all over the place, not wearing masks, not social distancing, and they're going to get killed. I mean, this is a stupid seeking missile. So this stupid seeking virus is going to seek out stupid Americans and shoot them in the lungs. It's going to be lung shots, right? Respiratory illness. It's going to shoot them in many other organs as well. And many are going to die because they didn't, even after we open up, they don't social distance. They don't wear masks. They don't wash their hands. I was watching War Room Pandemic yesterday. Excellent show. And they were interviewing somebody running for office in Texas. And he was President Trump's previous doctor. And I like the way he's being Texas about. I love Texas. Some of our best soldiers come from Texas. It's one of the ways I judge people, as you may have noticed over time, whether or not they produce good soldiers or not. And Texas produces like some of the best soldiers in the world. I love Texans. And I love the way they lead forward in the saddle. And this politician, whatever his name was, one of Trump's old doctors, is talking about, we're Texans, we're going to open up. We want to get some of these industries back from China, and we want them in Texas, and I want them in this town, I want them in this city, I want them here, I want pharmaceuticals in this town. He's laying out his ideas and a plan. I'm like, I like you. You got action on your mind. You want to open up. You want to get our industries back. Get them in Texas. Get them in your area that your districts, and roll from there. And then he goes, and I'm going to shake hands. He's talking about shaking hands with people. I'm like, all right. What? You're a doctor, and you're talking about, listen, man, you lost me there. You lost me. You had me on all this other stuff. And then as a medical doctor, you're going to come out and say, oh, because I'm from Texas, I'm going to come out and start shaking people's hands because people in Texas shake people's hands. You are an idiot. I mean, you lost me on that part. Listen, we have to model for people. We have to inform people that we're willing to tell the truth. Number one, tell the truth. These are not normal times. These are not normal circumstances. We have to do things a little differently until we finally get through this thing. We do not have this virus under control, period. The reason that we've more or less flattened some curves is because we've been hiding from the virus. We've been hunkered down in foxholes, millions of foxholes. When we stick our heads back up and we start doing huggy-kissy again and shaking hands, and people are going to bars and spitting in each other's faces because they're up close again, casualties are going to go up. You know that. You know that. Tell the truth. This is what I think is going to happen. We're going to open up, and I think we should, knowing, strongly suspecting anyway, that our casualties are going to dramatically increase. We need to tell the truth that we still need to stop shaking hands. For now, when this is over, we can go back to shaking hands and huggy-kissy and all that stuff. When this is over, we can go back to not wearing masks. We can go back to being close to each other. We can open up all those nightclubs again and everything else when this is over. But it's not, and we don't have it under control. We have been hiding from it, and now we're going to stop hiding. This is what I think is going to happen when we open up. What I think is going to happen, especially looking at 1918 and other things, we're going to open up. The numbers are going to increase. We're going to see a lot of deaths. A lot of us are going to see people that we know die. And then people, as they tend to do in pandemics, will become afraid, and then they'll self-quarantine again. And then some people won't, but a lot of people will start to self-quarantine no matter what the government says. In other words, a lot are going to go back home. They're going to go, whoa, 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 people all in my town are getting smoked right now. They're getting killed. And it's not going to take long. You know, very soon, maybe June or so, I think we're going to start to see that number go right up, and you're going to start, I'm guessing, I don't know what the temperature is going to do and the weather and the seasonality. I don't know. There's too many factors. Even the scientists don't know. So I don't have much of a chance other than looking at history and reading the cards. And what I think is going to happen is we've got people like that politician in Texas and other places out here making bad modeling for people wrong, using his credentials, medical doctor, this sort, and the other thing, probably to get elected. Listen, if you want to give away Republican votes, do clown stuff like that. Say you're just going to shake hands with everybody. I think probably most doctors in the universe realize that's really stupid advice. And you lost my respect with that. And that's massive. That's a catastrophic loss of credibility from someone who wants to trust you. I want to trust you. I want to know that you'll tell me the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then I'll respond as a man to truthful information. But the moment I think you're lying, you're out. And that was a direct lie that shaking hands is okay. You know it's wrong. We need to open up. We're going to see, this is how you tell the truth. We need to open up. Our economy is being destroyed. There are other threats besides all the people this virus is going to kill. We got China on the rise. We got all kinds of other problem sets going on here. We've got internal issues that can go critical mass from a collapsing economy. We got to get our economy back open, even if it increases our casualties in the short term. See, that's how you tell the truth. Some of us are going to get killed. That's how you do it. We're going to do this mission, and some of us are going to get killed, and we're going to go win, right? That's how you tell the truth. You don't tell the truth by, nothing's going to happen. And next thing you know, people are getting shot all over the place and dead, and, everybody runs back to their holes. But if you built that expectation to begin with, then when it really starts to happen, people are mentally prepared for it. Some are still going to bolt, but others will be like, this is what we were warned about. I'm going forward, right? That's just the way I am. Former Green Beret, if there is such thing as former, war correspondent, cannibal hunter, taking on top leadership all over the place all the time. That's who I am. So be who you're going to be. Anyway, that's what I think is going to happen. We're going to open up. We need to open up. We're going to take a lot of casualties because of it. Some people are going to say, but there's no price on life. Here's the answer to that. Stay home. If you don't like it, stay home. If you don't like states opening up, stay your ass home. If you don't like it, don't go out. If that's too much of a problem for you, get a tent. They're cheap, and go live somewhere out in the woods. You can do that too. You can live outside. I've lived 2, 3 years out in tents, probably more. I don't know. I'm fine. I'm healthy. You know what I'm saying? You can do it. And there you go. So let's get down to answering questions. I think let's get up to the top real quick. Hey, Jim in Michigan. Let's go back down. Man, people all over the place here. And my Florida. And, I'm leaning stronger and stronger to going back straight to the United States and skipping Taiwan, although I really want to go to Taiwan. There's very important things to do in Taiwan. But there's very important things that we can't help defend Taiwan. And listen, remember, as I say so many times, first you have to take care of yourself. When the mask comes down, and you're in the airplane and the mask comes down, first put it on your own face, then the child, right? This is Soldier 101. This is everything 101. First, you have to take care of yourself. Even during 1918, we were losing thousands of doctors and nurses. They were begging people to come in that failed nursing school and failed medical school. They needed everybody on deck, right? And it was unbelievable. Nurses and doctors, some were, couldn't handle it, of course, just like now, and others turned out to be superheroes, and many were killed from the virus. And that's what's going to happen. And so let's keep rolling. Hey, Mark, stepping back, Cheryl in Northern Nevada. Let's keep going. All right, I'm going to try to answer questions. Kenny Bunk, Maine. That's where the sun rises first over the United States, isn't it? Michael Kissinger, hello, in Missouri. All right, here we go. I'm looking for a question. Jim Hendon is saying, we've become a country of extremists. We always have been, Jim, when you read U.S. history, actually. One group believes social distancing, masks are wrong, and any closings are wrong. The other believes we should all stay home while Rome burns around us. Yeah, what we need to do is take every precaution possible, open up, and realize we're going to take a lot of casualties, and do it. And I'll put my body where my mouth, mosquito, hope there's no dengue here. There is. I'll put my body where my mouth is. See that? That's a grenade hit my hotel. I'll tell you about it. I'll go into harm's way. No problem. But guess what? When you see me in the United States and I'm traveling from state to state, I'll be kitted up with mask on and that sort of thing, unless I'm out away from people. But if I'm talking with you face to face, I'm going to have my mask on until this is over. You know what I mean? I'm not going to walk up and shake your hand. No way. Not unless there's a creek right there and I can wash my hands off, or I got some soap. I'm not going to put soap in the creek, but you know what I'm saying? I'm not going to be doing this idiotic stuff, shaking hands. That's just straight up stupid. Mark says Maine is closed until further notice. What's all over the ceiling? I'll tell you about it later. Oregon is on lockdown until July. Apple put out, because they can see a lot of people that have apps on your phones. They can see what you're doing. There's all kinds of apps and phones and all kinds of ways. And it looks like a lot of people are ending their social distancing anyway. And keep in mind, actually, our government doesn't have the lawful right to make you stay. They don't have the lawful right to make you stay home. The president can ground all the flights. There's all kinds of things your local health department can do. It can close down the restaurants and that sort of thing. But I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, a constitutional lawyer, but I know there are sharp limits to this. And many of those are surely going to be challenged in court. That's not pencil flippings. That's a M79 grenade that exploded on my hotel room. I'll tell you about it. Let's see. Some people thought they were trying to assassinate me, but I don't think so. And I'll tell you why. Monique says, we Italians are aware we are many posted through the pandemic alert. Many posted. I don't know what you mean. Hello in Ireland, Brenda. Oh, can I say what I did again on India? I was just reading about India today. I read about India every day because I'm very interested in the well-being of India. I want India to be fine, and I want to go back to India. But obviously, they made all the foreigners leave that are on tourist visas and that sort of thing. And for obvious reasons, some of my friends that were in India, I was just talking with one the other day. He left recently. He said a lot of Indians were starting to treat and uh, he said they were starting to treat him very badly, actually, because they were asking, "Are you from Italy?" Because remember, the first big cases in India, I believe, were from Italy. So many Indians were like, looking for Indians and wanted to, didn't want to be anywhere near them. But India obviously is doing a lot of testing. That's great. India is doing what they can, but you're in India, Bharati, and you know how densely populated it is. And although some of the most educated people in the world come from India, as you well know, you've also got loads of people that really they're not that well educated, as you quite well know. And so they can be a little harder to get to conform, to do social distancing in these highly dense. I mean, how's Varanasi doing now? How's Benares? I wonder how, in that densely populated place, or down in Mumbai, or so many places like that that are so densely populated. Man. Hey, West Jordan, Utah. Speaking of West Jordan, I was just reading about issues with Gaza. Let's see. 4th of May is very limited reopening. Lay says, "Holy smoke, shrapnel! You might just be the most interesting man in the world. You should be called Dos Equis." Yeah, I actually that one. I don't think they were trying to assassinate me. A lot of people thought they were, but anyway, I'll tell you about it. The reason that America is doing so badly is in the. This is Donald Lively. The reason that America is doing so badly is in the communities of color and poverty and poor access to relevant language and medical care. I don't know, because remember, a huge amount of casualties in the United States also are from nursing homes. That's why you remember back in about February, I was saying, go get all your loved ones out of nursing homes. I said many times, if you have loved ones in nursing homes, go get them out. And remember, in Massachusetts, over 80 veterans were killed in one nursing home, within just the last few weeks. So that was in one nursing home, over 80 older veterans. So we lost them. And that's happening in it looks like Texas and Florida and some other places may be covering up numbers from nursing homes. And it's actually quite obvious that they're doing it. Janice saying, "Did you hear about Japan having their second surge?" I don't know if they had their first one, but Japan is clearly on the uptick. And also, I would caution my Thai friends. I'm in Chiang Mai, Thailand. The Thailand's been doing extremely well at this point, but it's not over. And Thailand's opening up again as well now. And whatever you do, don't underestimate this virus. And don't, under any circumstances, think that you have this in control, because you don't. Nobody has this virus under control, period. Anybody who thinks they do is either has a God complex or they're very stupid. This is quite serious. A lot of Americans seem to have both. That they think that America can do everything, and they don't believe in any sort of science, and they're about to die. A lot of them. I don't trust the numbers coming out of really any country at this point, because there's different ways. Even if they're being completely honest, every country is going to be reporting in different ways, and so it's very difficult to make sense out of the numbers. All we can do is look at them in total, in aggregate, and then try to make sense out of them in context to each other, right? And then I think they can start to make sense in context to each other. But on a country by country basis, every country is going to, collect their data in their own ways, and there's many different cultures, and so there's different, it's just too, there's too many variables. Mark stepping back, the medical literature is beginning to emphasize the pathogenesis of inflammation, cytokine storm with Wuhan, you mean CCP virus, that was described in the 1918 flu pandemic. Mark, this thing is weirdly like 1918. The more you study 1918, the more you just like these parallels are just bizarre. Mostly in regard to, I'm not scientific. I'm not. I actually think scientifically. I've been reading chemistry, physics, especially physics, since I was less than 10 years old. I mean, it's been so. I've devoured almost a library full of science books in my time, but I'm not a scientist. There was years I thought I would become a physicist, but what I'm getting to is I have that way of thinking. That's my paradigm on the world is more scientific than wishful thinking and that sort of thing. And but looking at what's happening on the human dimension comparing 1918 to now, it's just like a mirror image. It is weirdly the same, to the point where it'll blow your mind. It will blow your mind. Yeah, Kim just got the great influenza from Amazon. I suggest you read it. You're going to be blown away about how similar everything is. Yeah, CCP virus. Let's see. Matthew is saying, reading a book about, I hope I didn't skip any comments, because I realized the other day I was trying to read all the comments, and then I went back later and I realized I'd skipped a few somehow. Matthew Dill, reading a book about Herbert Hoover. While it doesn't talk about the flu, but he was instrumental in other activities, especially with his work in the war effort and his work with Harding. You know, we're actually going to have a couple things going at once here. This 1918 size pandemic and a Great Depression simultaneously. I mean, at least our ancestors got those in series. It looks like we're going to get these in parallel, that's why I said since January, this is set to be the most incredible event in human history. And certainly by February, it became more clear that what is unfolding, and by March and April, and certainly now by May, I think this is going to be the most watershed moment we've ever seen in human history. All the things that unfold. I think that this virus directly, my guess, is based on listening to scientists that I think are not bullshitters, like Gabriel Long from Hong Kong, and Doctor, and some others that I think are actually truth tellers, and just looking at 1918 and other things. I think that the deaths from just this pandemic, just the virus, will be in the tens of millions. I think the United States will be really lucky if we get by with just 1 million. I think that'll be super lucky. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be more. And then related deaths, I think will be much, much higher. Like the people that don't get treated for cancer, the people that don't get their transplant, the people that had a car accident but couldn't get into surgery, that sort of thing. I think our total deaths will be much higher, and then the economy, which will add to that. And then I think famine in many parts of the world, I think, is going to be severe. I've been saying that since January and February. That's why I've been saying since January, stock up on food, plant a garden, everything. Make barrel potatoes, do whatever you're going to do. But do what's ever within your own ability to make yourself more resilient. Everything that you can do, as King Rama IX said for decades, I think about 60 years in Thailand, he taught Thais to be self-sufficient. Self-sufficient is another catchphrase for resilience or prepping. These are the same things. Self-sufficiency, resilience, prepping, same thing. King Rama IX taught that for, I think, 60 years or so. And as a result, Thais are quite resilient. They, for in just so many different levels. It's another reason it's called Teflon Thailand, right? Thais realize they have to look out for themselves and their families and then their communities, right? And expand out on the oil spot thing. And another issue from 1918, remember the United States. Let's talk about the United States. It's something I'm more qualified to talk about. In 1918, a lot more of our people lived on farms, a huge number. There weren't the huge numbers in New York and all over the, metropolitans all over the United States as there are now. Now there's so many people that live in metro areas that are really completely dependent upon others for their survival, and for pretty much everything. Whereas in the past, many millions more and a higher percentage of Americans were very resilient. They lived on farms. They knew how to make their own stuff. So what if the stock market crashed? Speaking of which, that's clearly coming at some point. I could be wrong, but the fundamentals look bad. I mean, more than 30 million Americans unemployed and the stock market's still going up. Let's get realistic. Something ain't right in Hollywood. There's some artificial pumping up going on from the Fed and others. I think it's going to come crashing down. And you don't need to be an economist actually to see that. All right, let's answer questions here. But again, on the self-sufficiency, and now a much smaller number of Americans are self-sufficient. There's a lot of Americans, for instance, that live on giant lakes in Florida, and really none of them even know how to fish. And of course, you can't feed the whole state of Florida off of these lakes out there. But I guarantee you, in places like Lake Parker near Lakeland, Florida, and Winter Haven, Florida, where I'm from, if that place is still filled with Nile perch, as are so many lakes in Florida, if you know how to use a cast net, one cast, and you'll feed your whole family, you'll fill up the freaking deep freeze lickety split. And I mean, there's all kinds of ways. Like I used to go spear fishing. Well, I know it's illegal, but shoot Nile perch with a spearfish, it's so easy. You just get your snorkel on and swim out there and get a few Nile perch. 10 minutes later, cleaned them up, cooked. You know what I mean? It's like, but there's, of course, you can't feed the whole state like that, of course. But many people can be more self-sufficient. Cynthia Wood says, "You're looking great. You have a healthy glow from fasting." Thank you very much, Cynthia. Wow. Listen, this is my 25th day of fasting. No food for 25 days at this point. I think I'll go ahead and push to 30 at this point. I've never gone this long. The longest I'd ever gone before was 20 days. So 25, now I'm into the 25th day. So let's see how that goes. I did get hungry today, by the way. Not severely hungry, but I felt hungry. I felt like I wanted to eat, but I didn't eat because it passed quickly. Okay. Cynthia Wood has a question. People are dividing up into Gaza ruins, and it's pretty stinking mean. Into Gaza ruins. The media on both sides are spinning it. You called the pandemic back in mid-January. Is it still a threat? So many claim it isn't. It's a mind. Yeah. Well, absolutely it's a threat. I think it's just started. I think what we've gone through to this point compared to what's coming, this is the limber up exercise before the starting bell of a 15-round fight or more. I mean, like Mike Tyson said, what did he say? Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth or punched in the face or whatever he said. And I think that's what's happening here. Everybody has a plan to open up. And then we have that guy, the doctor in Texas running for office saying, and I'm going to keep shaking hands. He's about to get punched in the mouth. I mean, not literally, but by the virus. And no, it's clearly a major threat still. Anybody that says it's not a threat at this point either is selling something or they're really massively stupid. I mean, there's no way. I don't like to use the word stupid. If my grandmother heard that, she would really be upset. You're not supposed to call people stupid. But as a writer, I want to say what it really is. Stupid. The people this is a stupid seeking virus. It's a stupid seeking missile. It's going to seek out people that think that they're above and too tough for masks and that's for sissies and all that. Goodbye. They may get killed, they may not. But, if they get killed from stupidity, then that's just the cost of being stupid. Here it comes. And they're not going to hear me cry for them either. If they get out and they go to bars and all this sort of stuff, and they get in big congregations at church. Listen, in 1918, they also closed down churches and synagogues and everything else. They did the same thing. Now, if the churches want to open back up and go to church, there you go. Instead of doing it on television, okay, go. I mean, I think a lot of churches are going to be gutted. I think a lot of them are going to be, they'll shut down themselves later if they do this. I think a lot of them will shut down later. I think they'll shut down just the way it happened in other pandemics. People go, oh, this isn't so bad. This is a pattern that's repeated over and over and over in pandemics. People go, it's not so bad. And then they start doing their old behavior and boom, that's when they really get knocked down. And then they get afraid and then they go home. Then they self-quarantine. And finally, the thing actually gets solved. But they don't get solved by government action necessarily, but by fear because they just saw 3 people in their family killed, right? And there was no way to even collect all the bodies. I mean, that sort of thing. People were stealing coffins in 1918. They couldn't make enough coffins. It was literally a bing, bring out your dead, Monty Python. It was literally that sort of a thing going on. And that's the United States. Keep in mind, the United States, and listen, the United States in the 1860s, when you read about the United States in 1812 or even 1700s, the United States certainly in the 1800s was far more advanced than many countries I've been to today. I'm telling you, the United States, like in the 1860s in the Civil War, was 10 times more advanced than a lot of the countries I see today. And then we get to 1918 and the pandemic, we had top scientists. We had unbelievable, it was an incredible country. The United States in 19 was an incredible country already. And, and was not able to handle this at all. And everything that happened then is happening now. You should read about it. You should read about the United States in you should read about the United States in 1861. The United States in 1861 was really 10 times more advanced than most of the countries I've been to. The United States in 1861 was like 400 years more advanced than Afghanistan today. And I don't even think I'm exaggerating. I mean, that's the United States, and just read about it. Look at the old photos. You know what I mean? You're just like, U.S. in the mid 1800s was a very advanced country compared to most countries today, and was unable to handle it in 1918. So let me see what Jim is saying. Jim Patterson, the very first victim of the 1918 epidemic was possibly a Tepes at the British Army Hospital. In late 1916, he was a Chinese member of the recently arrived in France. Man, that gets into a big argument if you go down that road. You know what I'm talking about, Jim, I think, because I've heard you mention that before. And as you know, where it actually came from gets to be kind of murky, and people and the historians will start fighting about it. But certainly it came from somewhere, and it really did severe damage. Jan Benning saying, our local embalmers have gone to New York to help process all the deceased. That's the same sort of stuff that was happening in 1918. Same thing. Read about the 1918 thing. Same thing. Everything then is now. Like states started to fight each other in 1918 about, hey, we need this, and started, fighting each other for doctors and nurses and all kinds of stuff, supplies. They were complaining to the federal government. They're not getting enough help. Sound familiar? Same thing. States were, bogarting. There was shortages of supplies on all kinds of stuff. Oh, it was just out of control. It was wild. Well, I mean, it was a man-sized pandemic, 1918, and this one is too. This one is very serious. Let's see. World Dunlap. Dr. Osterholm of Sidra is a top scientist now. Let's see. SB is saying, yes, we were, Mike. Some of them, yeah, the United States was very advanced back then. Nicole says, hey, Mike, what's happened? The new green screen. Oh, this is a green screen. See it? Oh, wow. It's so good that I've lighted it so good it hardly even makes a difference when I try to wave it. Cynthia Wood, people are dividing into camps of believers and non-believers, just like 1918, just like that. Non-believers and non-believers. I've followed you on the pandemic since mid-January. You called it. It happened. So much vitriol and intentional confusion. Please tell me, do you think the pandemic is still dangerous? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I already read that. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And also there was a huge religious constituent there in 1918, just as there is now. There's a lot of religious people that are highly scientific thinkers, just as much as anybody ever. And then there's people that are really not very religious who are not scientific thinkers. And then there's people that, are belong to churches where they're just, they believe science is all voodoo. You know what I mean? Despite that they'll turn on a light and it'll come on. The people that think that they can wish this away, magical thinking, or pray it away, a lot of them are going to die. They're going to die. And that's the way it goes. Barry is saying back then only the rich have access to knowledge. Now many have the internet and can do research themselves. Certainly more average people have access to knowledge now than ever. Habits too. Like that knowledge has been available even before the internet. You won't believe how much time I've spent in libraries around the world, just huge amounts. Libraries and bookstores. And it depends on what section you go to. Like we all have or everybody that's on right now has internet in some level. And a lot of people are out looking at cat videos, which I actually like because they make me laugh. and a lot of others are looking at porn or whatever, and then others are playing video games, right? And then there's other people that are over on reading Science and Nature. They're reading, about space research or something like that, or the economics and medicine and things that can be useful in their real life that are not video games. You and Kip Moon, hello. Nicola Green screen is on. That's an old photo of Michael's hotel room. That's right. It was hit by an M79 grenade. Scott Adams is a cartoonist, but he's got an interesting blog. Actually, he constantly talks about I've watched quite a few of his blogs or his video cast. I would not have watched more than 10 minutes if I didn't think he's interesting. He's super intelligent and very smart. He constantly tells people not to mind read, which has been a pet peeve of mine since I was, 12. I mean, it's really serious. I've often, ever since I was a kid, that's one of my first things I'll notice about people. Are they trying to read my mind? Or do they think they can read my mind? Because if they do, I start to think that they are maybe not clicking on all cylinders. And he mentions that constantly. Mind reading is, and I do too. If you looked at my work for years, I'll be like, mind reading, you know what I mean? And he does that as well. Interestingly, though, I see that Scott doesn't have as much experience with other cultures as I do. And I hugely appreciate his words and the things that he publishes out there. But what he actually drifts into mind reading a lot, but doesn't seem to realize he's doing it. I could give specific examples, actually. I won't go into them, but for instance, when there was Iranians out in the Arabian Gulf with a limpet mine on a ship, and anyway, he said a few things. Every once in a while, when he talks about foreign cultures, he seems to subconsciously or unconsciously mind read and not realizing he's doing it. But when he's talking about Americans, I never see him mind read. He's very much worth listening to. Cynthia Scott Adams. Yeah, let's see. Ted, man runs on 4 positive hormones: endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, and oxycontin. Or let's see, is emitted when the bond, like shaking hands or hugging or snuggling with your wife. With certainly touch has a big, touching other people or dogs or cats, especially other people, seems to have some very positive effects on us, on our relationships. But there's some times when you just shouldn't be doing it. Mia Karzas is saying, so basically you're saying let Charles Darwin take care of them. Not really. I'm just saying that he will. I mean, I'm saying that if you walk across a highway without a 4-lane highway, busy road, without checking, without looking, what can I do to help you? You know what I mean? What can I do to stop you from doing that other than say, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Oh, he did it. He's dead. All right. What's going on next? You know what I mean? That's how, the people that get stupid and die from this virus, we're not going to start, well, unless they're in your family. I'm not going to stop and mourn them for being stupid. They were warned. They knew. They did it anyway. That's the way it goes. These are big boy rules, like war, like combat, like many things. Big boy rules, big boy results. You will pay for the consequences of your decisions, period. There you go. That's the way I look at it. Hey, Scott, whenever you put up a link, please put a 1 sentence at least on, hey, Diana, that'll explain it. All right. Let me just shoot down to the bottom. There's so many questions here. Wow. I'm sorry for skipping a bunch there, but I'm going to try to answer as many as possible. But there are so many. There's no way I'll be able to get to them all now. I'll try to hit a lot of them later as well. Kathy Cunningham says, also here in upstate New York, we have done a good job of limiting the spread and lowering the curve. This is great, but we also have a low degree of folks who have had the virus and gotten some immunity, probably. It's good that you put that probably in there. It is less than 2% as far as we can tell with random antibody testing. That means as we open up, there will be more cases, like 1918. I put that part in. We need to keep the medical system from being overwhelmed. So basically, we are flattening the curve, but also prolonging it. Yeah, it's coming. One of the interesting things about this time and 1918 and just so many other things in life. Remember that Stanford study, which was complete bullshit from 2 or 3 weeks ago, a month ago maybe already? The study that was uncontrolled, that was done with, 3,300 people on Facebook. That's how they recruited their subjects, was on Facebook. Can't even make up this stuff. And these guys are supposed to be researchers. It's just like clown science. A lot of it was happening in 1918. There was a lot of clown science going on with people with real credentials. And then there were real scientists with real credentials that were getting lost in that noise. There was so much noise from clown science. It's like when you go to wars, most of what happens, most of what you hear when you go Iraq, Afghanistan, or whatever, the vast majority of what's going on is noise. And you're trying to tune through that and get the signal can be very difficult. That's why one of the first things I do when I get to a new environment, whether it's Hong Kong, Iraq, Afghanistan, Thailand, whatever, is look for people that I think have clean thinking processes. They're not mind readers. If they're mind readers, I throw them out. I'm like, I don't want to hear from you anymore. You're wasting my time. Because I only have so much time that I can invest in listening to people. So I don't want to factor out, and he's a mind reader. I don't have time for him because there's not enough time in the day. I don't sleep enough as it is. So you want to go and you find the people that have very clean thinking processes, the people that are evidence-based people, the people that don't have magical thinking burdens on their thinking. And you go into those environments and you find these people And they're out there. There's a lot. You just have to find them. And they have to be in sufficiently good positions. They have to have the guts to tell the truth as well, or at least to tell you offline what they think the truth is. And you find that's one of the reasons why you've seen me so accurate in Iraq, Afghanistan, Thailand, Japan, Korea issues, Hong Kong, is going out and first things first. Where are the smart people that have very clean thinking processes, who don't assume? I had a relationship breakdown with somebody in Hong Kong because he assumed so much, I had to get rid of him. Super smart guy. I'm like, look, I can't put up with your assumptions. I've told you before, you're wasting my time. Never assume, period. I'm not going to ever listen to you again. If you do it one more time, you did it one more time, that was it. I just don't have time for it. Even though he's so smart and I had invested time in him, we don't have time for assumptions. Don't have time for magical thinking. Don't have time for mind reading. We need to find people that are evidence-based people and who have the guts to face up to things, no matter what we think, no matter where those tracks go, we follow those tracks. And as soon as we see, oh, this is a false trail, we cut it and we go to we try to find the trail again. And that's important. And that's, it works. Let's see. Gedalia Simcha. So basically, USDA nationalized the slaughterhouses. Massey's Prime Act, according to this, circumvents. How much truth is there? I don't know. And you know what? Listen, where's our strategic pork reserve that we're supposed to have? Where's our all these other reserves? Grain. Where's our masks? Where is all this stuff? We should not have, if all of our meat supply suddenly ends tomorrow from a virus, or whatever reason, we should not have a shortage. We should be able to dig in to our Cheyenne Mountain of pork and beef and every chicken and all that stuff. And we should be able to haul it right out of the mountain and have it until we get things going again. Where's our government been on this? Why am I and millions of other people prepared, but our government's not? Why did I have masks, and yet apparently thousands of hospitals at their level around the United States did not have masks, and counties and states and the United States and Canada and UK and so many other countries did not even have something as basic as masks. They are completely incompetent. They are not only not leaders, they are managers, and they are incompetent, lying managers. And a huge amount of them, not all, but too many, enough that it's causing us massive problems. Hello in Cincinnati. I hope you had a good walk. Hey, in Michigan, let's see. Lisa Morse Moon is saying it's a biopathogen and not a virus. Let's watch out. I don't know about that. Well, you put a winky face there. It's a virus unless something's wrong. But I can tell you what. And Mike Carson saying, what do you mean by mind reader? I'll tell you. I had a lawyer like that often. He would try to mind read, and I had to get rid of him. You know what I mean? It's like, that was many years ago. But it was just like, it's the people that will go, well, you're doing that because you think, and I'm like, hold on, Rambo. If you're thinking that about me, then you're thinking about that about others too. You're thinking you can read people's minds, and I'm not going to have time for you. You know what I mean? You don't know what I think. You don't know anything enough of my background to even take a wild stab at what I think, unless I've said it, right? Unless you've really known me for many years, you won't be able to take a good stab at what I think. Like when I say states should open up, I'm not thinking, and our casualties will be low. I've said clearly what I think on that. I think we should open up because the economy is losing our economy is a bigger threat than losing a lot of people in the short term. And I think we're just spreading out the losses anyway. But if we spread out the losses over time to not overwhelm the hospitals, we're just watching the economy die, like shrivel to death, and then maybe end up in a civil war and China, all kinds of things. I see a much broader problem set. I look at this globally and on the national scale I've been all over the United States. And I know that we have many cultures and I'm familiar with a lot of them. I really do think that we risk civil war. And unlike in 1918, when huge numbers of Americans were self-sufficient, fewer now are self-sufficient as a percentage of our population. And furthermore, more are dependent on direct government handouts, whether it's food stamps or something else. Direct, literally government handouts, literally feeding the pigeon handouts for people that could work, right? And what are they going to do when the tax base evaporates? And it's evaporating right now. The heat's up and the water's going down. I mean, there's only the IRS and everything, all the money they're collecting, that's diminishing by the second, right? So what are we going to do when it comes time to pay the bills, when people need food, and now we have less and less food to supply people to start with, and the tax base decreases? What are we going to do? Things are going to have to get cut, period. So there we go. But when it comes to mind reading, when people think that they can read minds, especially when they get, and Scott Adams will say the same thing. It's like, you tried to read my mind, and he blocks people right then. He just blocks them. I don't do that for mind reading. And a lot of times I don't even call people out on it. You'll just hear me say, assume. Remember the way you spell assume in the Army. You make an ass out of you and me. If you want to spell, I thought you had the batteries. No, I thought you had the batteries. You assumed I had the batteries. You didn't ask. We don't have the batteries. It's like, oh, well, so yeah, all our batteries are dead. We can't make comms. Well, you don't see that happening in Green Berets, or I never did. But anyway, that's like, a famous thing. Never, ever assume, right? And if you assume, you're setting yourself up for tragedy. And assuming that the government I saw Dr. John Campbell, I like to watch his podcast, make massive assumptions the other day. And he lost credibility in my eyes. He stepped down several rungs on the ladder. I saw him directly make assumptions, mind-reading assumptions as well. They were assumptions, and they were simultaneous mind-reading assumptions. He was talking about, he said President Trump had said, Dr. John Campbell, he's the British nurse. He's got his PhD in something else. And he's got good podcasts. But he said that President Trump said that he saw evidence about something. And then Dr. John Campbell said, well, if he said he's seen evidence, something like, I assume that evidence must have been. And I was like, all right, hold on. That's okay. He literally lost a huge amount of credibility in my eyes with that mind reading. And he said it. He's like, I assume, that President Trump is telling the truth, or whatever he said. You can look at the video. It's from about 48 hours ago, maybe 72. But the moment somebody assumes, they lose some credibility in my eyes. I might still listen to them, and there's a good chance I will, especially if they're a friend or something like that. But I will certainly trust them less, because in my world, I'm looking as a writer and as somebody who wants to live, and that sort of thing. I'm not looking for feel-good news. I'm looking for accuracy. I want accuracy. And I'm like, he assumes, he's a mind reader. You know what I mean? I'm trying to categories, and I'm like, I'm looking for people that I can fit into highly accurate categories. Like, this guy never assumes. This guy never tries to read my mind. Oh, man, I hope it doesn't rain with my ceiling like that. I'll tell you about it soon. But I hope I've explained it. Maybe I've beat that horse to death on assumption and mind reading. Those are two pet peeves. They have been since I was a child. Jim Delaney, how can we develop herd immunity to prevent those waves Dr. Fauci warned us about if we don't limit quarantines to just the elderly and vulnerable? I don't know. I mean, I'm not a virologist or an epidemiologist, but the way it's looking now is, our economy is, as you can see, collapsing, right? And speaking of which, thank you very much to the people that are supporting me on Patreon. and PayPal and Venmo and Bank of America and mailing checks and everything else. I hugely appreciate it, and I need it, and I'm going to need it when I come back to the United States. So even with the economy doing it the way it is now, and some people are dropping off of supporting me, which I understand. And I'm sorry to see you go, but I hope you're still tuning in. Some people are still supporting. But then Jim is asking, what can we do? I'm not one of those virologists, and I'm not going to assume anything that we can do. But one thing's sure, one thing we can see, which is clear, is if we don't open up, our economy is, well, it's on fire. And so it looks to be at this point, if we don't have, pharmaceuticals and people don't adhere to non-pharmaceutical interventions like masks, social distancing, washing hands, that sort of thing. And there's almost certainly not going to be any vaccine anytime in the near future. We're probably just going to have to take our licks. And that's why I keep saying we should open up. But I'm not saying that, and we're not going to take many casualties because people are just making all this stuff up, because they're clearly not. The evidence is obvious. The bodies were stacked high in Italy and New York and other places. Look at China. I mean, and they lie about their statistics, but we could see what they physically did. They shut down Hubei province. I mean, they quarantined Wuhan and many other things. And so this is very real. It's live fire. And remember, in 1918, it went slow like this in the beginning. It's slow. I mean, there's already more than 200,000 dead. I think it's going to end up being tens of millions just from the virus. That's my guess. I think it's going to explode before this year's out. I think the numbers are going to explode. And I think a lot of people that were not self-quarantining before will change their mind when they see people dying in front of them. And others won't. Some people will just be like, well, I'm going to continue. There's people like that. And there's people that will be afraid when somebody dies within 20 miles of them. Let's see. Lois says, tyrannical governors are destroying their states like mine. We have to take our chances. Yeah. And you may have to defend yourself against the government. Ward Dunlap says, for who knows a person's thoughts except their own spirit within them? It's biblical. And you know what else? A lot of people don't know what their own thoughts are. We all have, I think, times like that. I don't know. I mean, I do at times. I mean, that's why you'll hear people often say, they'll be like, I don't even know what I'm thinking. You know what I mean? I mean, how often do you have to sit down and collect your thoughts? And then you'll do something and you might not even know why you did it. I mean, if you don't even know your own thoughts, I mean, how can somebody else know them? There's a lot of things that we, I don't need to get this ceiling fixed. It's a green screen. I'll tell you about the ceiling. But thank you. Jim Delaney, with crashing tax base and mounting debt, government can't responsibly avoid huge cuts and costly government giveaways, entitlements. It's inevitable. No, I don't know if it's inevitable, but I think it is. I think that it is. I don't know that. I believe that it's true. Sharon says, you are no experts, and I find you assume. Actually, you don't. If you pay very close attention, Sharon, the one friend I had to finally just, I say friend, he was a business associate really, that I had to just, we had to end, he was wasting my time with assumption. I said that too. I was very clear with him. I was like, I want to continue our relationship, but you're going to have to stop assuming. I don't have time for it, period. I'm busy. I got an insurgency to cover. I don't have time for your bullshit. You got it? Right. So, and he would go, you assume, and I'll go, no, I don't. I take what information I can in, and then I take my best guess. A guess is not an assumption. A guess is, here's the information that I have. This is what I think. This is what I think is going to happen. Like now, what's happening next with this virus? I don't know. I'm not going to assume. I do not know. And you don't either. And if you think you know, you're wrong. You're assuming. And you have terrible thinking processes if you think you know, because you don't, right? And if you think something today and tomorrow it turns out to be correct, you're just lucky. You know what I mean? Or, I mean, you've studied enough that you've made a good hypothesis that turned out to be true. But there's a huge difference between an assumption and a hypothesis. Huge difference. Massive difference. Rex Gardner, do you think the depression will come this year? Yes. Ewan Kip Moon, Dr. Campbell has long taken China statistics at face value. Oh yeah, he loses me on that. He'll assume China blah 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 blah, and he'll go China's got it under control and blah 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 blah. You know, he loses me on stuff like that, and that's why I actually watch his show less and less. And Danielle Drummond says, do you follow Q? Negative. I don't know what it is. Julie Cheney in Georgia. Hey, Julie. Hope George is doing okay. Julie Cheney saying, Mike, how in the hell can they say we are getting better and the numbers keeps going higher? Just stupid. I mean, I'll just use it what it is. I'm just thankful my grandmother can't see me calling people stupid. I would really get a very bad note. But there you go. It is what it is. Donna Smith, look at the money, and every country will save on pensions because of the number of elderly deaths, Donna says. Yeah, they will, but they'll save and lose a lot of our old people with a lot of old knowledge, which I rely on daily. I listen to older people a lot more than younger people, by the way, on a lot of stuff. I listen to young people too. I listen to the full spectrum. But when I'm looking for wisdom, I don't look to young people. I look to older people. Oh, it's okay. Erlilanda Anderson, I wish I could afford to donate. I enjoy your information. It's no problem. Other people donate. I really need it. But it's look, when other people donate, they help me get it out there for free to the other 99.9%. Word Dunlap, we still do not know exactly who is vulnerable. There are ways, the odd cases of people being killed with nothing else that is present. Yeah. And also keep in mind, the virologist will say this, well, not just this, but viruses, a lot of these viruses, you have to listen to them. They're obviously, they know 1,000 times more about viruses than I do. I just know the books I've read. But some viruses actually mutate a lot more than others. But viruses like this, they're mutating every nanosecond as they replicate. So I mean, there's many strains out there of this one already, and some are big and some are small, according to the experts. And they're constantly mutating. So even whatever we have now, there could be a mutation like that just happened, and that's got an R naught that's like 14. You know what I mean? And that's 30% lethality. You know what I mean? It could be. I mean, that could have just happened, and it could be spreading massively, and we don't even know it yet. Or inverse, it could it could mutate, and predominant strains could go the other direction. That's what the virologists say constantly. I love listening to those guys. I followed a bunch of virologists on Twitter, actually. Josh says, what do you mean by civil war? Can you give an example of what you mean by civil war? Which states would open up fire? Well, not necessarily state by state like it was in 1861. It could be, the face could be completely different. It could be along many different lines. At this time, I don't foresee state-on-state civil war at this time. There was the report of Maryland bringing out the National Guard to guard some of their medical supplies against federal seizure. But that's a one-off at this point. I don't see something like 1861, or at least I'm not imagining that now. It would be more on the lines of maybe possibly many different lines. Like when I see the Civil War in some other countries, often there's many different components. In other words, like let's say Iraq, because Iraq is a war a lot of us are familiar with. And when in 2005 I was saying there's a civil war and people did a lot of pushback, and they didn't recognize it until about 18 months later. There was actually multiple civil wars going on. It wasn't just one. And so, and likewise, if you look at Afghanistan, there's multiple components to it. There's like Hazars fighting, uh, you know, um, Pashtun fighting other people. It's like, Baluk or whatever. So I mean, it's all. There's all many. There can be many different components, and within the United States, it could be. Not necessarily a civil war, even trying to overthrow the government, although there could be that component. But there could be certainly a racial component. There could be economic components, which could be more along the lines of a rebellion. I mean, there could be. I just see. Let's put it a more general term. That's more general, and I'm safer to say this: civil unrest that is very disruptive, highly disruptive civil unrest. So that way, I'm avoiding the labels of civil war and that sort of thing. Let's see. Let me shoot down to the bottom again. And Danielle Drummond says, you said you don't follow Q. Not sure what it is. QMap Pub. QMap Pub is worth looking into. Oh, thank you. Can you put a link up to that? Thank you very much. And Toy Stuart Biederman. Yeah, Lewis, in some states, the restrictions are excessive and arbitrary. For example, in California, the governor closed many parks and beaches, even though few people catch the virus outdoors. In Michigan, the governor won't let people buy seeds, paint. Yeah, it's ridiculous, isn't it? And gardening tools and hardware stores. Some of the rules do not appear to be constitutional. Yeah, exactly. Like arresting people that are on the beach. Actually, when you look at that, I mean, just walking alone out on the beach, who's going to get it? You know what I mean? I see spring break or whatever, but, and then other things are completely wide open that are indoors, right? It's like, it makes like there's flights all over America, but they're closed to beaches, but you can get on an airplane, no problem. Get in the test tube and the test tube with wings and fly around, in that, and then you're good to go in vitro. Yeah, thanks, Danielle. I think when it comes to depression, Rex says, yeah, I think it's clear unless something magical happens. I think that we're looking at a depression worse than the Great Depression, but I don't know. I could be wrong. That's just my guess. I don't know. I'm not assuming anything. Word Dunlap. Most important, viruses can carry long-term payloads like destroying the pancreas years later. Look at Kawasaki syndrome, Zika, etc. Yeah, and also some of the scientists are saying now this is doing what appears to be permanent lung damage and other organ damage. Let's see. Let me... we're done that. We are doing better than the original assumptions. Not better than my original assumptions, that's for sure. Because first of all, I didn't assume anything, and secondly, we're just like in round one. We're just getting warmed up. This thing's like we're just getting started. Let's see. Ewan Kip Moon. Liz, what I've read is that hospitals have been ordered to stop elective optional surgeries, waiting for Wuhan virus cases that don't come to some hospitals yet or never. And also, they've been doing that for a while, actually. I think even maybe in February, certainly by March, some hospitals were not taking a lot of the elective work anymore. Let me explain what happened to my ceiling. This isn't my ceiling. at home. This is in Bangkok in 2014 during a rebellion that successfully overthrew the government. And I was there with Soy. Soy just fasted for 21 days, by the way, with me. And Soy is Kai's mother. And so we were out there going around to all these things. And then this was at Democracy Monument. So I got a hotel at Democracy Monument. And then somebody did a M79 grenade attack on Democracy Monument and killed 3 or 5 people. You can look it up online. Democracy Monument grenade attack. That was right out my window. The reason I got that hotel was because I could, if you know my patterns, if there's action, I usually get right very close to the action. Like another grenade in 2010 in Bangkok, RPG hit 3 floors above me, during fighting. And that was at Dusatani Hotel. This one was called the, forgotten the name of it. Anyway, it's right on Democracy Monument there in Bangkok. And they were shooting those M79s all the time. It's a grenade launcher I used to carry in the Army, actually, so I'm very familiar with it. But I had just moved to another hotel like maybe 2 days before because for some reason it got booked up and they moved me out. So I moved to another hotel a few blocks away. And then there was this, big shootout at Democracy Monument, which would have been right outside my window, as you can see. And then grenades hit there and killed 3 or 5 people. And one hit my room. It was my old room because I just moved out. So I called Soy. I was like, hey, Soy, I heard that hotel I was staying in got hit, whatever the name of it is. And so, and some people thought they were trying to assassinate me or whatever. And I don't think so. But anyway, so we went down there. We met down there, and the people let us go up on the roof, and we looked at, there was a big hole in the roof. It was a metal, like false roof. Wasn't a false roof. It was like a, sheet metal roof. And then under that sheet metal was this drywall roof, right? And underneath that was my bed that I just moved out of a couple of days before. And so the grenade happened to hit the ceiling and went right through. But none of the frags actually hit the bed, weirdly. Anyway, so that's what happened. But the reason I don't think anybody was trying to assassinate me was because I'm very familiar with the M79 40 millimeter grenade launcher. First of all, I would have been easy to kill on the streets anyway. But secondly, the M79 grenade launcher, which I'm extremely familiar with. I mean, I carried it for several years in Green Berets. I used to fire it a lot. And I know how hard it would have been to hit my room from the place where I knew they fired the grenades from. It would have been very hard to do it intentionally unless you were super, super well trained, like weirdly well trained, like so well trained it would have been bizarre. Like you would have had to have fired tens of thousands of rounds out of it probably, and you would have had to know what room I was in, and your elevation would have had to have been just perfect. And I don't know. It could have been. I won't rule it out. But I don't think they were trying to assassinate me. I think it was a lucky shot. Or unlucky. Blew a hole in the roof. It also hit another roof. Another one hit another roof and hit a big, like 1,000 liters or something, water container, and it all leaked down like, I don't know, 6 floors of building or something. I went over there and looked at it. Soy was there as well. Barbara says, no one will have money or the means to make it. No purchase power. Yeah, it's very important to invest in your self-sufficiency at this point. Very important. Barbara says, in a depression, give us examples. What will go on? Well, I've never seen a depression in the United States. I've only read about it and heard about it from the old timers. I've seen them in other countries. I've seen a lot. First of all, huge amounts of shortages. Crime will explode. There'll be a new economy will form. I mean, the economy won't die. The economy will still be there. It'll just differ. It'll change. A lot of the old jobs that used to exist in the past will be gone. So people are going to have to adapt as quickly as possible. Self-sufficiency will become very important. The ability to grow stuff, the ability to, you know, to make do with never throw away any food. Don't throw away a scrap of food. Don't flaunt your wealth. If you have wealth and you're out there flaunting it like a big pig, you know what I mean? You're asking for trouble. You're asking for trouble. I mean, first of all, people are going to want it, and we know how that goes. And secondly, it's going to make people angry. So don't be a big pig if you got big money. Certainly don't flaunt it, because you're asking for trouble in every sort of way. And that's the sort of thing that can cause a government to become, actually Trump has been handling this in a very smart way. If you'll notice, he's totally failed on the pandemic side. But when it comes to how to handle the states' rights and some other things, I think he's done pretty seriously well. I mean, notice Trump has not been the Nazi that a lot of people accused him of. He's the opposite. He's like, you can do what you want. It's down to the governors. So he's putting it off on the governors, which is a clever political move, right? So every governor has to make their own decision. Trump's saying, it's down to you. You want to be the big man or big woman making the decisions? Have fun. And then you'll get all the credit or all the blame. But if you suspect things are going to go bad, which I highly suspect they will, then pushing it down to state level is a way of pushing the blame away from you and saying, well, that was the governor of California. That was the whoever or whomever, right? So there we go. Let's see. Jan asked if I'm still fasting. Yes, this is day 25. Day 25 of no food. No food for 25 days. I feel fine. Today I felt a little hungry, but I didn't eat. So today I actually thought about breaking the fast a little bit today, but I didn't do it. Because I didn't. When I really feel like breaking the fast, I will go ahead and break it. But it was just, it passed. Barbara is saying, agree. We should start opening up the economy in California. Workers and small business owners are facing many challenges. Son spent many years building up his business and reputation. Now his shop is semi-shuttered, but he is still to pay $10,000 a month for rent of his small shop space in addition to rent for a family home. Oh, Lord. Going to be some big decisions quick. And the earlier you make those decisions, the better. I think another thing that the federal government's going to have to, and state governments and local governments, is they're going to have to look very hard at pay cuts, right? I mean, a lot of things are going to get cut that people don't like. Like, I don't want to see the space program get cut, but that's going to be first on chopping block probably. I don't want to see basic science get cut, but it's probably going to get chopped right off, very quickly. A lot of very important science that's being done is probably going to be cut early, which is to me a tragedy. All right. Thanks, SB. SB says, amazing on the fasting. We are going to decide ahead of time when you will eat or wake up. Stay time for, I don't know, when in the past, when I've broken my fast, generally it's been a snap decision. Generally it's been like, okay, I feel like eating now, and then I go ahead and eat. It's usually not planning to go. Although this time Soy said she wanted to go to 21 days after she had gone for a while, and then maybe 13 days or something, or however long it was. And then I said, okay, I'll follow you to 21. And now she's finished. And I kept going. So though at this time, I think I will go ahead and go for 30. So it should be about another 4 or 5 days, right? All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and shut off soon. Ewan Kip Moon says, Barbara, this guy's book is popular in prepper cities based on his experience of the Argentinian Depression. I think the guy you're talking about, Ewan, is somebody that I've seen on YouTube before. Yeah, and he had some interesting comments. If it's the same guy, like he stockpiled 18 months of food and burned right through it. And he was like, that wasn't enough. He's like, learned some lessons I'm sure he'll be teaching his grandchildren. Danielle says, Trump is a rock star. In my opinion, he's showing governor's true colors. It was quite interesting, actually. I mean, I think it's a clever move by Trump. Well, actually, and also, if I were president, I would probably push a huge amount of it down to states as well, because states can make better decisions based on their state realities. Like Alaska's got a massively different reality than Hawaii and Florida and New York, right? All these states have massively different realities than California or Arizona. And so, nobody can make a decision on all these things. It needs to be pushed down. But then there's some things that can only be done at federal level, like ground international flights and a lot of the other things. Well, it's too late for that. It's too late anyway. But there's some things that can only be done at the federal level. But then there's a lot of things that are far better pushed down to the state level. And let's see. Ewan Kip Moon says, yes, he's a modern survivalist on YouTube. I'm going to have to look at that book then. Have you read it, Ewan Kip Moon? If you've read it, then and you say it's good, then I'll go ahead and read it. It's on a backlogged by about 2 years. But if it's something that, I'm constantly rearranging my reading list, actually, based on, like there was a lot of books on Afghanistan that were deep on my reading list as I would get through them. And then when I lifted and shifted to a different country, I was like, okay, no, now those are way down the totem pole. So I'm constantly rearranging the priorities of my reading. Yeah, Kevin says in Illinois, half the deaths come from nursing homes. It's a lot from nursing homes. Okay, and this Ewan Kip Moon says this article summarizes some of the Argentinian information. I need to read more of that. I think there's a lot to learn from Argentina because they're also in a modern society there. Leia says an army marches on its stomach, gets some scoff. I'm okay. When I get hungry, I'll go ahead and eat. All right. Jacob says, kind of up to you. Start small. You can always start another one, go longer. Oh, if you're talking fasting, yeah. I suggest if you're going to fast, start really small. Just go for 12 hours one day. And you'll be like, that wasn't very hard. I thought skipping lunch and dinner was going to kill me. You know what I mean? And then you're like, yeah, that's nothing. Actually, I think every special operations soldier, like the Green Berets and SEALs and Delta and Rangers and MARSOC and all those guys, PJs, they should all do at least 1 10-day total fast and still going to the range, still firing your weapons, still jumping out of airplanes and all that stuff. And then you'll see, like, hey, I can operate just as well as I ever did. I mean, I might not want to go for a 30-mile rucksack march, you know what I mean? But I can definitely do all the day-to-day stuff like shooting and I can do it just as well as I ever did. And it'll build some confidence. It'll build some confidence and also one thing when you're in a special operations unit, one of the most important things is just resilience of every sort of resilience you can build, because there's many sorts, and you want to build as much resilience on as many ways as you can, and as much self-confidence in as many different ways. Okay, you hasn't read it yet. Okay. What's a good book on Afghanistan? Oh, let me look on my shelf over there. I got a bunch of books on Afghanistan. Oh, so many. I got so many books over here. Oh, here's an interesting book. Not on Afghanistan, though. Oh, let's see. I'll be right there. Let me see here. Okay. A few books. Hold on, I'll be right there. Okay, here's some books. Here's some books that I've read. You might enjoy. As you can tell, I like hardcover. But actually, these days, I like Kindles more. Because on Kindles, I can carry. It makes it easier to do a lot. Here, I'll show you a few. These are good books. Hold on. I'll show you these books. I'll get them out of my hands first, though. All right. Race War is a good one, but that deals with USA and actually, I would like to read it again. It deals with USA, Japan during the old days, all kinds of stuff. Man, this is really interesting. Really interesting. It's written by a black man, super smart. You can see that's worth reading, but not at the moment because we're so busy with other stuff. But when we're after we've gotten through this horrific period that we're about to go through, then read that book. And same with this one. This is a great book. Ahmad Rashid, he's a great author. Actually, his book Taliban was like incredible. That was even better. I read Taliban before 9/11 because it came out 6 months before 9/11. You should read the last paragraph of the book Taliban. The last, because that book came out 6 months before 9/11, right? In that very last paragraph, it was so prescient of that book. He's just like, and something like, if the West or U.S., if the West, I think, doesn't pay attention now to what's going on in Afghanistan, we're going to pay a heavy price. Just a few sentences. I'm like, that was distilled truth. That was pure truth. It all came out to be, that was a great book, Taliban. This is a good one. But, they're not important right now. This one. That's a good one. There's all kinds of great books, man. I love books. This is a great one, Ghost Wars. I highly suggest that one. Also, that one and Looming Tower. Read those two in tandem together. I was just talking with a friend the other day. He's a surgeon, Army surgeon. And he was like, you should read Ghost Wars and Looming Tower in tandem. I was like, I did. I was like, and yeah, and you should. Kim says, welcome, Donna. Kim says, PayPal versus Patreon. You've gotten all the money from PayPal without any complications on my end. I just signed up on Patreon as a test. It looks like the money gets to you, but others whom I don't know are getting a small amount of money. I'll investigate and let you know. Could just be me getting hacked or something. Still sending. Oh, thank you. Actually, I mean, no matter how you send money, unless you hand it cash, which nobody does, but unless there's always going to be an intermediate, whether it's PayPal or somebody's going to take their cut, I like Patreon because people then set up month by month. And you wouldn't believe how much donations went to books. I mean, I spend thousands of dollars on books. Unbelievable. You should see my let me see. The Asian says, reading on Tyranny by Timothy Snyder at the moment. Is it any good? Well, if you're still reading it, you must think it's good, unless somebody is making you read it. Here's a great book. I didn't show you this one. This is the best book ever written. That's not somebody's religious book. That's the best book ever written in all of mankind. Danger Close. That's about my growing up in Florida. And you can see it got the Bill Gurley Award. Whoop, wrong side. That one got the Bill Gurley Award, which is a very rare award to get. And anyway, read that one. You can get the Kindle. I'll actually get a commission if you get the Kindle, and read it. Tell me what you think. It's the best book ever written. You'll see. I mean, You think I'm biased? Actually, that was my first book, and I wrote it without any training. Though a lot of people gave me feedback on the drafts. You're welcome, Mike. Let's see. Patreon is definitely better. I like much better because I can count on it month by month. Let's see. Jan also says, while fasting, make sure you take care of teeth. I like oil. I like oil pulling or wheatgrass rinses. Oil pulling. Oil pulling. What's oil? Oh yeah, I still brush teeth. I still floss. I still floss and brush my teeth. I don't care if I'm fasting. Um, oh, Gary's reading Danger Close now. Then you know it's the best book ever. And you'll see the Bill Gurley Award and why it received it. Yeah, it was a selfless plug. You know, it's funny. After I came out with Danger Close, there was no book with that title. There was no book, no movie, no nothing with that title. I was like, that's a great title, especially if you read the book. I talk about going through SF training and just all kinds of stuff. And especially about growing up in Florida and going through Green Beret training and some other stuff that almost got me put in prison for Lord knows how long. And that starts right off in the first chapter. You should read it. Just read the first chapter. You'll see what I mean. And actually, I should update Danger Close because now I know a lot more about my family lineage because I came out with Danger Close in 1999, right? And now I know a lot more about my family lineage, and it's a wild family lineage. I didn't know as much about it as I do now because now we've got all these things like ancestry.com and you know, you can just fill out the family tree. Then you can see why I've been the wild Florida man that I've been. I had grandfathers fought in the Revolutionary War and just goes on and on and on. Let's see. What's your thoughts on that? Gomez saying, don't know what thoughts you mean. Oh, Pat Tillman. What's my thoughts on Pat Tillman? Complex. One is, I don't know if he was murdered. I wasn't there, so I'm not gonna. I'm not even gonna go there. But I think he was a hero in many sort sense. He turned down his what $3 some odd million or however contract for football and joined the Army Rangers. And he was off fighting, I think, in Iraq, and then he got killed in Afghanistan. And Gerald McChrystal helped cover it up. You know, McChrystal that I attacked in, not physically, of course, in Afghanistan because he was mismanaging the war. He's attacking Trump now, by the way. McChrystal, he doesn't stand up to his advertisement. Let's put it that way. But the Pat Tillman thing, every time I hear his name, it just is upsetting because here was this true American hero, like the truest American hero, the backbone of America, and turned down that cush football contract that would have made him all these things. And he went off and became an Army Ranger, and he got shot, right, by friendly fire. And yeah. And then the cover up. And now anytime somebody hears his name, instead of thinking hero, I mean, I think hero and tragedy, that I also think of cover up. I shouldn't be thinking that when I'm thinking about a hero. I should just be thinking about a hero in much reverence. Yeah, it's upsetting. Ed says, the last person I gave Danger Close to, after reading it, keyed in on the Bill Gurley Award. Thank you for, we'll just keep that between us. Jan Benning says, coconut oil pulling. If it, I don't know what that means, coconut oil pulling. I've got coconut oil here, actually. I got virgin coconut oil, virgin olive oil. I got all kinds of these great oils that I'll be using when I go back to eating again. I eat very good quality food, mostly fresh stuff, you know. But for backups in case of, you know, no food, then I got loads of canned stuff. and increasing amounts of it are self-canned. First thing I did when I woke up this morning was I cooked 17 eggs and canned those. Actually, I was thinking I should have done 50, but I did 17. I'll do 50 soon. Jesse says, I want you to do an update on Danger Close and include some of your kid pals that you have admitted you hadn't included. Yeah, and some of them come onto my Facebook while we're doing lives and stuff. And actually, remember when I shot that alligator up close when I was 14? That was a giant alligator, man. That was 12 feet 3 inches long. We ate it. Oh boy, that was. You can read about it in the read about it in Danger Close. I shot it from very close range. And then my friend that got me to go over to Afghanistan, Rodney Morris, who comes on sometimes, super good friend. We used to work out together and chase girls together. And I didn't include Rodney in that story. And Rodney, he said he was there. And I said, you weren't there. And he started telling me stuff that I didn't put in the book. And I was like, you were there. I was like, how can I not remember that you were there? Because he told me parts that I didn't actually include in the book. And, you know, because it's a longer story. You don't want to sit through twice as long a story to just get down to, you know, fighting the alligator and all that. And I was like, wow, you really were there. And he's like, yeah, I was there. I was like, how? That is just so weird. So when I do an update, I'm going to ask Rodney again and include him. And then also, instead of saying that I'm a Heinz 57, like, because we came from so many different places, my family tree, I'll lay it out. You know, it's a very interesting family tree, actually. Yeah. I can add a lot of things in there that weren't. Was Scott Helvenston in my first book? Oh, he was. Scott Helvenston's in Danger Close, isn't he? Scott Helvenston was the youngest SEAL ever. He was killed in Iraq at Fallujah. You may have seen the photos of the contractors on the bridge. We used to work out together, but he became the youngest Navy SEAL in history. He was a supreme athlete. Scott was. He was an animal. He was a super SEAL. He wasn't, you know, there's SEALs and then there's super SEALs, just like Green Berets. They're not all made equally. Trust me. Let's see. Yeah, that's right. Beating up Stoney and a bully with glasses. I remember that. Those are lessons for the rest of my life. It's funny how many you may have seen over the years how many people have tried to bully me. And now you've read Danger Close, you see why I don't back off. You see some of my thinking, like killing a 12-foot alligator from super close range when I'm 14. The alligator weighed like 3 times more than Jocko Willick or whatever his name is. You know, I'm like, dude, I don't care. It's like, you know, I trained for years to do a suicide mission into Poland. I am not afraid of you. You know what I mean? You know, it's just not afraid. Yeah. Yeah. Word Dunlap says friendly fire is always a risk. War is dangerous. Cover-ups should never happen. Vacuums. Yeah. Especially it was so tragic with that. Yeah. Actually, Danielle is saying similar to General Flynn, hero and cover-up. Yeah. And I have some very close mutual friends with Flynn who are close friends with him and close with me. And that's why you never saw me comment much on General Flynn. I was like, I don't know him personally, so I couldn't say, but it just seemed very off. I didn't think that he was likely to be a traitor. And then super unlikely. And then you know, and as much as I don't like Gerald McChrystal, if somebody accused Gerald McChrystal of being a traitor, I would be like, I don't think so. He might be a lot of things, but I highly doubt he's a traitor. I mean, I think he's a straight up American. I just didn't like him as a commander. But you know, the Trump derangement syndrome, And it's not just Trump derangement syndrome. There was a Obama derangement syndrome and a Bush one, and it goes all the way. As long as I've been alive, there's been a derangement syndrome for every president. But the derangement syndrome with Trump is acute, and anybody that's anywhere near Trump is subject to getting. They'll hang you. You know. Jacob says, Tillman was just a great guy in the local community here in Arizona. Every year there was a Pat Tillman run. True hero. He was. He was. Every time I see his photo, I just think, man, what a hero. Yeah. Melanie says, I wonder about your poor mistreated stepbrother. Well, I talked with him some years ago, and he's fine. He seemed very, very good. He actually forgot a lot about that. He didn't even remember a lot of it. It was just like went right over his head. He said he was in the Air Force, did really well, and I asked him about that stuff. He's like, "Oh, I don't remember any of that." It's just like wiped from his memory. That's wild. Jan Benning says, you swish the coconut oil between your teeth and clean them after brushing and protects the enamel and gums. Then spit it out. Very good for your teeth. I eat coconut oil for good teeth. Good. Oh, okay. I'll look it up and then maybe I'll start doing it. I'm not going to do it while I'm fasting. You know, it'd be like putting food in your mouth and like, oh, I'm not going to eat. I just want to taste it. You know. All right. All right, let me go ahead and go offline. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, everybody who has helped on Patreon and PayPal and in so many other ways. Venmo is very helpful. I'm having a hard time thanking people on Venmo, and sometimes I have a hard time thanking people on PayPal. But I thank everybody on Patreon. It's easy for me to thank them there. But some ways I actually have a hard time thanking people for whatever reasons. I can't get the email address or something. But so far I've been able to thank everybody on Patreon. And if you didn't get a thank you from me on Patreon, then something went wrong. But on PayPal, it just doesn't always work for whatever reasons. And I apologize for that. Big time. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and go offline. It's 2 a.m, 2:07. Mic out.